This is Amy Chan from CakeDecoratingSchool.com, and if you like cake decorating, you're in the right place. In this video, we're making a buttercream palette knife tulip cake. It's broken down into steps so you can skip ahead, rewind, and rewatch as desired. We're going to mix 3 colors today, and we're going to use some white in addition to these colors, and we're using American style buttercream, but you can use other kinds as well. I think Swiss or Italian meringue would work well for this also. We're doing some nice palette knife tulips, so I'm going to start with making a beautiful purple for myself, and we're going to use the following liquid gel colors for all of our shades. Neon Bright Pink, Red Red, Violet. We're also going to use Coal Black, Royal Blue, and finally some Lemon Yellow. To start with though, I'm making a purple, so I just want to go ahead, I want to make a nice intense color for myself. 2 drops of that purple. There we go. 2 of my pink. So like equal amounts on those. And I'm just going to use a little bit of my red. So I'm just going to squeeze out a little bit, just give it a little touch. So we're not as big on the drops. And we're looking to make an intense kind of purple. I'll use my Neon Bright Pink to give it that kind of bright, vibrant feel, which we'll see as it develops. A little bit of a red in there, just to give it a kind of berry vibe. There we go. And it's giving me a nice kind of blackberry feel, which I really love. And that's going to deepen for me as well. So it's going to get really nice and intense. For our green, we're going to start out with, there we go, some Royal Blue. Less of our lemon, because I want it to have a bit of a kind of foresty vibe. We're also going to add just a little bit of black. So just a few specks of that black. And if we need to, I can add more yellow and adjust. But I want a green that has more blue in it than yellow. And I think that'll play well with the color we made for our tulips with that purple. And that is looking good. I think just a little more of my black and we should be ready to go. Gorgeous. Our final color is going to be some yellow. I don't need very much of this at all. So you can see I've got less frosting than I did for my others. I'm just going to start with a drop of lemon and add a tiny touch of my black, just to give it a kind of common thread with my other colors, which are kind of intense and a bit moody. So this will give me kind of a great kind of electric mustard yellow that's really going to pop out for our centers. And we can also use some for blending with our green. Perfect. We are going to use 3 palette knives for this tulip cake. The first is what I call the shovel. And you can see it's a broad, flat one. It's got that curved, rounded edge at the top, and it's just nice and wide. So this is going to be great for making our petals. The second is our long, skinny diamond shape. We've got some other diamond ones that are smaller and fatter, but you notice this one is a nice, long, skinny one, and that's going to be great for making leaves. And finally, we have our small diamond, and you can see this one is very petite, and it's going to be great for helping us to make centers. You can even use it if we need to make some smaller leaves at any point. But this one particularly will be great for our tiny little centers because we just need small little swipes. If you don't have these palette knives, try using your regular offset and your tapered offset spatula in place of these. It'll be a little trickier because of how the handles are offset, and you won't have things like this tiny one for doing centers, but you can still make it work with just those basic tools. We're going to do a quick review of the techniques that we're going to use for our palette knife tulips. And the first one are going to be leaves. And for that, we're using that long, skinny, diamond-shaped palette knife. And we're going to do a 45-degree roll. So think about pushing the palette knife at 45 degrees back and forth. And what you're going to do is create a nice little roll or pill of frosting on the back of our knife. And we're going to show you that in a second. If we want to do fatter leaves, we're going to make a nice big fat roll back there, do multiple strokes with it. So think the initial one and do other ones to kind of even it out, make it flat, and give it a tiny bit of texture. Smaller ones can be a single skinny little swipe. So they'll be flat because there's less on there to push into. So we can control the size of our leaves, like how fat and big they are, by loading up more or less frosting. So now that we've talked about it a little bit, let's do a sample load on our knife and give it a pull. I'm going to pull down a little bit of frosting just to work with. Just get some out there, enough so you can kind of make an area that's longer than your knife, and then just push back and forth. And you can just take a look at that beautiful little roll we built up there. And if you want less buttercream to work with in that area. If you want more buttercream, right? So just go until you get a nice shape on that roll and you're ready to swipe with it. So we've got a nice fat roll on our palette knife. So when we push down and pull, you can see it gives us a leaf with some depth. So if we want to give it more of a feel of a tulip leaf, we can just take and do additional strokes with our palette knife without building it up. So just think about pulling once, twice, 3 times, whatever it takes to make it a little broader, a little flatter, and you can even drag your tip in it to give it a little texture. For our centers, we're looking to just give the idea of something in the middle of our tulips and a little contrast and color there in the center, just something peeking out. So we're going to do the same kind of 45 roll. So think about pushing that palette knife back and forth, but we just want to concentrate on getting our frosting on there right on the tip. So think about just using maybe the top third, top half of this tool rather than the whole thing. So just a little bit will do for us. It doesn't need to be a lot. We're going to use our yellow for our centers. So you just want to think about grabbing a tiny bit just with our spatula, going back and forth till you build up a nice little roll there, and really only using the top half of that. So if you need to, use another spatula or just your finger, your nice little multi-tool, to just kind of clean off the bottom and remove any excess. We just need a tiny bit to make some little swipes. So we're going to apply our centers much like we would leaves, where we're just going to use our tool, press down flat, and pull. We just need to make some little swipes, little idea of something yellow there in the center. And it probably won't take more than 1 or 2 for each of our tulips. For our petals, we're going to use our shovel shaped. We're going to do what I call a roll, flip, and dig. Could also be like a scraping motion, but we're going to use that same kind of angle and push back and forth to build up our frosting. Then we're going to flip it over, take it, and just scrape it through the frosting. And that's going to give us a nice buildup on that kind of top edge for ourselves. And it's really going to give us a beautiful shape to our tulips. If we want thicker petals, we're going to use that nice 45-degree angle and really build up on the back and do a nice heavy scrape or heavy dig there to build up a nice roll. When we want thinner ones, because sometimes we won't want them to have as much depth, we'll want them to just be kind of flat and not have a lot of relief to them, we'll do a lower angle. So think about just opening it up a tiny bit. When you push then, it's going to build up less frosting on the back. When we flip it over and do our little dig motion, just go a tiny bit. You want to build up approximately the same kind of depth. You don't want it to be too heavy. That way when we put our petals on, just do a nice swipe with our palette knife, it'll leave us a thin, flat petal that has less relief to it. And we'll be able to use the two in combination to give our tulips some depth. For our petals, same kind of motion. So think 45, build up a nice roll there on the back, and you can see it leaves it kind of bare on the edges, so we're just going to dig in. So we're just building up a nice buildup on the end of our palette knife as well, so we get kind of an even thickness throughout almost when we view it from the side. If we want to do our thinner petals, we just do a lower angle and dig in less there so it kind of matches. This thick one will give us a nice petal with some depth. Once we have our little roll built up, we're just going to use this. Think about placing it down, smashing into it, and then pulling. And you can see that leaves a nice ridge around the edge, and that's going to give some of our petals some nice depth. And sometimes we're going to pull down and use the top edge of our palette knife to create the top of our tulip petal. And sometimes we're going to turn around and pull the other way. And we're going to try and get that nice little heathery edge for ourselves as well. So you might notice that while we're working, sometimes we're pulling towards ourselves, and sometimes we're either pulling away or we're turning the cake so that as we pull, it's kind of almost like an upside down petal. But that's going to give us some variation in the shape and the feel of our petals and help give our tulips some nice movement and interest. The first thing we're going to do on our cake is make some leaves. And I want to start with a little bit darker color. Think things that are in the background aren't getting as much light. So I'm going to pull down some green, and I've got actually just a little bit of purple over here. So I'm just going to mix in a tiny touch of that, give myself even a darker vibe, and just make myself a nice big roll. And you don't have to mix your colors completely. If they're not fully blended, it gives you even more of a beautiful effect. So I'm just going to start with a nice fat one. Get a big, beautiful roll on there, and we'll go ahead and make a nice leaf on our cake. So I'm going to just pick a spot to get started, and I want to think about this as the top of my arrangement and kind of pull all the way around the sides. So just dig in, pull, and follow the curve of my cake. I've blended my green with a little bit of my yellow, and you can see I've built up a really slim little roll there. So just less frosting on that. That way when I swipe, it's only going to require a single go. So we'll just place and pull. I've got another little slim, so think little skinny roll there, and I've added some white this time, so making it even lighter. So you can really see that color difference now between the one where we added some purple, added some yellow, and now some white. And so just a nice, long, steady pull there. I've built myself up a nice big fat roll, and for this one I've just used the green that we mixed, so not other colors blended in, just that solid green. And I'm just going to leave some space in between this grouping of leaves, so think we're going to put a tulip there, and the next one. So it's going to be like a little bunch of tulips with some leaves mixed in. And just come down here and make a nice fat swipe. And you can see those leaves have some texture, some dimension to them. So I'm just going to use some little additional pulls with my palette knife just to kind of spread them out and kind of flatten them out, and just go as much as you need to. I've done a nice little skinny load, and now I'm going to go off to the side. This one is green and some purple mixed together, so something a little darker off to that side. And now I've mixed a little yellow and white in with my green, done a nice little skinny build right there, and I'm just going to put a little third one off here to the side. And that should give us a good start on our leaves. You can see we've got a lot of variations in our colors, but also in that thickness and the size of our leaves. The first thing we're going to do is make some thick petals. And for this, I want them to be a little bit darker. So I'm just going to take a tiny touch of my green and mix it into my purple. And that's going to give me a nice kind of moody, kind of muted shade for these beautiful petals. So you want to think about, get a nice amount of that purple buttercream out there, mix in a tiny touch of green, and really go back and forth with that spatula. Nice open angle. Build up a nice roll, and when you've got a nice roll, flip it over and dig into it. And you can see from the sides the height of that roll in the center and the area that I built up on the end kind of match up. So we're going to get a nice swipe with that to make a beautiful petal. It's time to start placing some tulip petals. So I want to start kind of in between this little gap, right in that negative space between those two leaves. And my cake was really cold. It came straight out of the refrigerator right before we started working on it. So those leaves that we did are nice and firm because we're just doing these thin swipes of buttercream. So you shouldn't have to worry too much about things mixing or blending, and you should be able to swipe right on top of the work you already did. That one, you can see I did a nice thick petal. It's a little darker because I mixed in that green. I'm going to repeat that, do one here in this void and one down here. My second one is going in right here. And my third is going in at the base of my second grouping of leaves. So just make sure you come in a little from the outside edge to the cake because we want to leave room for some more petals. We're going to do our second petals on our tulips. And I've done a thin buildup on this. So you can see, there we go, nice thin profile on that. So just a lower angle with the spatula when you're scraping it back and forth, and less buildup when you dig. And you can see that buildup on the end matches the height of the little roll I made. And our goal here is just to make some thin, kind of low profile petals. And I want to start kind of lined up with my first one, and then just move it over a little to the right, and then a little lower down. So that way we get some difference in the height, placement, and orientation. So just come right here and pull. And I'm not going to worry too much if I drag into my other tulips because we're going to do more work on top of this and it's going to cover that up. And if you have any little blemishes in between, we'll cover them up with leaves later. So if you drag in a little to the others, don't worry about it at all. I'm going to repeat that for these two as well. It's now time to put in some little stamens because we've done our two back petals. So we just need some yellow. You can mix in some white, some green if you want to, but to start with, I'm just going to use some yellow and build up a nice little small roll on the end of that. And if you get too much on there, just swipe off the bottom. Since we've got both of our back petals on, it's time to do our little centers. That way they're kind of nested in between. So just think about putting a little swipe or two in the middle. So you want to be a tiny touch down, maybe a quarter, half an inch at the most, from the top edge of those petals. And you just want to go and pull a tiny swipe. And you can blend your colors for these as well. So I did some pure yellow and then just a little with some of that white. We've done the back petals and centers for all three of our tulips. Now we're going to work on some of the front petals. For this, for our first one, we're doing a thin buildup. So you can see just nice little roll frosting there on our spatula, nice and thin application. And you can see by the color, I've mixed in white with my purple. So this is going to give us the feel of a lighter petal on top where maybe more sunlight or light is hitting it. And for this one, I'm going to start with the rounded end of my spatula facing towards myself, plant that at the bottom and pull up. If this is a little awkward for you, you can always spin your cake so you're still pulling towards yourself, but basically we're going the opposite direction with these petals. And I want to start a little lower down and just kind of off to the side for myself and give it a nice little pull. So steel yourself, get ready, place, and pull. And you can see that gives me a nice little swipe of that lighter color that kind of starts to cover up a tiny touch of my yellow. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with that same color combo on my other 2 tulips. For our final petal, because it's only going to take 4 to make a tulip, we've done a nice big fat buildup on our shovel-shaped spatula. And I've taken the lighter color that I made for the 3rd petal and just blended some more of my dark purple in it. So it's kind of in between that lightest shade and the color that we made, that kind of pure purple. And I'm gonna go, so think about top of the tulip, move down because we wanna make sure our centers are exposed. We did the last ones where we pulled up kind of to the right. So this one a little to the left, and that's gonna give us the overall shape and feel and give us a nice kind of fat buildup and edge over here. So just nice pull, short stroke, and make sure that attaches. And that gives us a beautiful little shape to our tulip. And we're gonna go ahead and keep going and do this on our other 2. So I'm not too worried about where these ends collide and overlap, because you can see this next petal we're gonna do on top of there on this one is gonna cover up any of those little blemishes at the bottom of our first tulip. We've got all of our finishing petals on, and you can see that gives us a nice shape to our tulips. We give petals kind of going in different directions at different heights, so it gives us a nice view that looks like we can just see the insides of them, and it's looking fantastic. And I just want to do a few finishing touches. So I've prepared a few leaves for myself. This one is green and white, and I've done it on my small diamond knife because I just want to get a little leaf in here, just place and give it a little swipe, just a little something. You can see that gives me a little contrast, kind of helps finish and shape the bottom of that. I like the other side, so I'm just gonna leave it. And then I've got one that's green and yellow on my long skinny knife that I'm gonna just put in right over here. So I'm just gonna reposition my cake for myself. So I'm going to take that long skinny that I've built up with a mix of green and yellow, and I'm just going to go in and just kind of nest right here because I ended up covering a lot of my leaves and their points in the background. So I just want to give myself a little more, maybe drama is the best word for it, over on this side. Put in a little leaf with that one. And I've prepared another short one as well. This one's just green, come in right there. That gives me a little bit more of a finish. So I can keep going in with leaves, layer them up on top of the base of my tulips as much as I want to. I really love the finish of this one down at the bottom, so I'm just gonna leave it. But if you're working on one of these at home and you don't like the way things went down at the bottom of some of your tulips, just think about covering them up with your small palette knife. Just give them a few little leaves anywhere you need to, just to kind of give yourself a little bit more of a clean finish on those bottom edges, help shape them, and help encourage the imagination to see these as beautiful tulip flowers. So you can see we have our finished cake design, and you could even go further and almost wreath your tulips all the way around the cake. It takes just a few simple strokes. We're doing basically the same thing, heavier or lighter application with our leaves, just the same motion, the same buildup, and very similar for our tulips. It's a similar motion to build it up, and it's really that same motion, just heavier or lighter application to make our different kinds of petals. The important thing here is just mixing up your colors so you have some contrast. So blending in some darker shades, using the pure tone you created, blending in some lighter, so you get some contrast between the petals on each one, and just kind of layering them so they're offset from each other. Our back ones are higher up, and one is to the left and one is a little to the right, and then we lower that down for these bottom ones that are in front. You think one to the left, which we pulled up to help give us a nice little rounded curve shape on the outside edge of our tulip, and the other one down and thicker and off to the left for us. And that gives us a nice view of at least the tops of those back petals and the contrast between the colors and the ones in front. And it makes it look like we're looking at some tulips that are kind of gently swaying in the wind and blowing from the side. We can just see just a little bit of those centers. So it goes for a nice, lovely design that really we've made with only a couple of simple strokes using the right tools. That's all for this lesson on palette knife tulips. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, we hope you'll check out our basic palette knife flower. It's a great foundation if you're new to making palette knife flower cake designs. And if you like these, check out some of the other cakes in our palette knife flower series. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like more about the cake decorating materials and equipment we use, or just some inspirational videos about cake decorating itself, you can follow us on Insta or YouTube at Cake Decorating School. If you'd like to know more about yearly membership and what it entails, you can go to www.cakedecoratingschool.com for more information. And if you're interested in these products, you can check the links in the description.